Welcome to Centered, a show to keep you grounded. Today we'll be discussing the controversial censorship that American social media companies like Twitter and Facebook have recently engaged in order to stop the spread of misinformation on their platforms. Today I have Alex C. and Justin X joining me. Welcome. Alex, would you like to start us off?
Popular social media platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. often flag or delete information that they claim is either misleading, false, or against the terms of service for their platforms. And this has caused a lot of debate around social media censorship and these practices that the social media companies use to keep their platforms safe and open. A lot of these companies have come under fire recently for flagging or blocking tweets made by politicians for these same reasons. And a lot of people say that it is against First Amendment rights to be blocked or censored on these platforms, but that is simply not true. These social media companies are private businesses, so it's up to these companies what gets posted on their platforms and what is not posted on their platforms.
So, Alex, you've stated that it's legal for these social media companies to censor things because it's not a violation of freedom of speech. However, just because it's not illegal doesn't mean it's right. So if these social media companies go down the road of censoring anything that they might find misleading or wrong, we could end up in a system where people are pressured to say the right thing and that their opinion doesn't matter, and that could be devastating to our democracy as a whole.
Would you say these media companies are entitled to this type of censorship?
These social media platforms are just in an impossible position because they have to balance between these two sides of either A, censoring too much and making their platforms either unusable or way too controlled, or B, not censoring at all, and the platforms would be this toxic spew of lies and terrible things. So they have to find the least bad option somewhere in the middle there, and that's really hard, especially because social media was never designed to be used for politicians and important government business. It was designed for pictures of your family and pictures of your pets and just keeping up with your friends and stuff.
Well, I'm sure that all of these social media companies have good intentions. They want their viewers to know the facts about things. But frankly, sometimes it's just opinions, and opinions can't be just judged as wrong. So the moral responsibility falls in that the point of posting things on social media on their sites is to gain traction from others. So it's their responsibility for everyone's posts to be equally treated by their algorithms, and for not just certain posts to be flagged as misleading or certain posts to be deleted.
How do you respond to right-wing accusations that social media companies are too left-wing?
First of all, that's not necessarily true. Almost all of the, quote, censorship that happens on social media platforms is done by algorithms, not people. It's not humans choosing what gets put on the platform. However, one could make the argument that the algorithms adopt some of the biases that the humans who create them have, and most of these algorithms are created in Silicon Valley, which is a very liberal area. But it should also be pointed out that these social media companies have an incentive to make sure that all voices are heard on their platforms, because otherwise people would stop using them.
So these companies are economically incentivized, so their algorithms right now are favoring themselves more than anything, themselves being the company. And that's not fair for any user, and all it does is create division among content, which is not fair.
What moral obligation do social media companies have to protecting the public from misinformation?
Well, the companies have to, first and foremost, obviously because it's a business, they have to protect themselves and make sure that their platforms are not being used in harmful ways. And second, they have to ensure that if their platforms are being used for harmful things, that their users are protected. And like I said before, they have they have to choose the least worst thing. It's a really hard position that they're in, because if social media platforms choose to censor everything except for one viewpoint, like Justin was talking about being politically correct, then the social media platform just becomes an echo chamber where everyone's just agreeing with each other and the views are escalating in severity. Or if they don't censor anything, then the whole site is just a toxic free-for-all, which is closer to what we're seeing now on Twitter and Facebook and other platforms. So the responsibility of these platforms is to ensure that those platforms are a good place to be for their users.
After researching the topic for the last week, what surprised you and what new thing did you learn?
So, unlike the last debate I was in, which was about climate change policy, I already knew quite a bit about this topic, and I already had several opinions formed on it, which made it easier to find more sources because I knew what to look for, but it made it harder to come up with arguments for the other side, which I had to do at several points during my research. Like I said in the debate, the social media companies are just in an impossible situation. And I think, as much as I would like to believe that tweaking the algorithms over and over again and releasing new updates and continuing to fight misinformation, I don't think that's going to solve any of the problems. I think, if anything, it will make it worse, or it'll just make people leave the services for more polarized services. So I think the real solution in the end is for people to realize that social media is not where you should be getting all your news, and it's not where you should be spending all your time when you're learning about politics, because it just wasn't designed to work that way, and it will never be a perfect system. So, yeah.
I share similar sentiments with Alex. And when researching this, I found this to be an amalgamation of many different topics ranging from biasm to the algorithms on these social media sites to just economics, because one of the biggest influencing factors is how much money are these companies making, and related to that is whether or not how much you want to please your audience, which turns into if you do the right thing, you're going to scare your visitors away. But one of the things that resonated most with me is in one of the sources I read, it said that even if you are banned or if your posts are being censored, it doesn't stop you from going back to that site. So it's like, if your post gets censored on Twitter, you're still going to go on Twitter and tweet about anything, really. So it's one of those things that people are just mad about, and that's what's fueling them. So some of the things that I've come to understand, that it's the people that are fueling themselves. So as long as people aren't going to change, this debate isn't going to change either.
Thanks for listening. The Center team worked really hard to produce this episode, so we hope you enjoyed it. As usual, if you want to do some additional reading for yourself, you can check out the sources page on our website. Usually, the host of the episode makes these end announcements, but while editing this episode, we came to an agreement to take a holiday break, so our next episode will not be released until sometime in January. Thanks for listening, and happy holidays!